For this afternoon and tonight, a significant winter storm, including heavy snow with limited trainings.
Hello, and welcome to the Snowbrains podcast, where it's my job to interview the most intelligent people in the snow sports industry and pass their fascinating knowledge on to you, our listeners. I'm your host, Miles Clark. I'm a professional free skier, a professional mountain guide, an Alaska heli ski guide, a UC Berkeley molecular cell biology graduate, the founder and CEO of Snowbrains, and I'm right in the middle of a historic storm cycle in Lake Tahoe, California. Today is January 16th, 2023, and it has snowed over 140 inches since January 1st. It's been an amazing experience being back in Tahoe, connecting with old friends and new, skiing powder day after day. The ski resorts in Lake Tahoe have already received over 350 inches of snow this season, and it's only mid-January. I can't wait to see what the rest of the season will bring. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by your Northern California Toyota dealers. Whether you're conquering the commute to town or answering the call of some freshly powdered slopes, the new Rav4 Hybrid is there for all your Tahoe adventures. Featuring electronic, on-demand, all-wheel drive and a 219 horsepower hybrid engine with a 40 mile per gallon combined rating, it's made for action and made for the mountain. Visit toyota.com/NorCal for more details and start your next adventure in a brand new Toyota, the official vehicle of Palisades Tahoe. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Vail Mountain. Vail is celebrating its 60th anniversary this season. That's 60 years of powder days, back bowl skiing, ice bars, and new experiences. No matter how many times you've skied these slopes, this season is all about celebrating then, now, and forever. And as a part of the celebrations, Vail will be hosting the National Brotherhood of Skiers for their annual summit in February. So go ahead, plan your next visit to Vail and help them celebrate what's shaping up to be a legendary season. My guest today is Kelly Pawlak. Kelly has been the CEO of the National Ski Area Association since 2018. Kelly has occupied a variety of executive positions in the ski industry over the past 30 plus years, including 12 years as Mount Snow Vermont's Vice President and General Manager. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a surprise and a treat.
Well, wow. I'm blushing already. No, we're honored to have you on here. So I'm really curious to hear your perspective. You have so many interesting numbers that we'd love to share. And I guess the first number I always ask everybody is, when did you ski last?
Either late March or early April of the 22 season. Yeah.
Excellent. And how many days did you ski last season?
Okay, here's the thing. I've never counted days. Even
Nobody does.
Even when I was working at a ski area. But what I do count now, well, when I was at the ski area, I counted trails. And it was my goal every year to ski every trail up the mountain, every little part and piece, which when you have like 30% natural snow trails, you got to get after it when it does snow.
Yes.
Especially in southern Vermont. But now what I count is ski areas. And I don't know if you've seen like the US ski area map that you can just buy on Amazon.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah, right. And then I have those little push pins.
Oh, that's fun.
My goal is before I finish this job to ski every ski area on that map.
And how many are there? We're going to get into this later, but how many ski areas are on that map?
So there's around 470. And
wow.
I can't count a ski area that I skied prior to this job. So the first 50 years of my life, I don't get credit for that.
Well, that's tough.
That's good. So I'm going to have to ski till like I'm 100.
Yeah, that's all right. It's good to have a goal like that. Well, thank you for that, Kelly. So today I really want to dig into, what it is that you do, what it is that the National Ski Area Association does. And we're going to call that the NSAA for abbreviation here. And I'd love to dig into these numbers because I find this all so fascinating. So let's start right off the bat. So you're the CEO and president of the NSAA. So please tell us what the NSAA is and what they do.
Right. So the National Ski Areas Association, and now I'll go to NSAA for the rest. We're a trade association. We're located in Denver, Colorado. We have over 300 ski area members.
Wow.
And we have over 400 supplier members. And when I say supplier, think of all the products that ski operators buy, everything from grooming machines to ticketing systems, software. So that's our membership. And what we do, I'll tell you what our members say are the best benefits to being a member, why they value their membership. We do a bunch of research and data share. We do a bunch of advocacy and government affairs work. We facilitate industry collaboration, work on stuff that kind of pertains to everybody. We provide a bunch of educational resources. I'm on the road with my team a bunch, and we do education, safety education. We'll put together seminars, trade shows, events. So we go to about 20 of those a year, probably more. A lot of networking.
Wow.
Our members love it when they get together and they network. We also help out with media and crisis communication. So we can help the ski area. Sometimes stuff goes wrong,
right?
And they need to focus on the guest and the staff, and really taking care of the situation. So we can step in and we can help, for instance, the media understand the broader picture. Obviously, we don't speak for the ski area, but we can tell them, let's say it's a fatality. We can tell them about some of the stats nationally so they can better understand what goes on in the ski industry.
Absolutely. So that's a lot. So it sounds like you're even doing some lobbying in the government, to make sure that we have laws in place and practices in place that could benefit ski areas in the U.S. So if you could boil it down to a couple sentences, what would you say the NSAA does?
Yeah, our purpose is to help our members, our ski area members, thrive and help them with sustainable operations.
That's fantastic. Yeah. See, I knew there was going to be a kind of a gut punch, single operative message there. And it's huge. And I think that what the NSAA does has been pivotal and important. And so, what if you were going to answer that question, briefly, why is the NSAA important to ski areas in the U.S.?
Well, we were put together back in the 60s. One of the primary reasons was to promote safety across the country. And Your Responsibility Code was born from that. Obviously, it's been through many changes over the years, but that's originally why we were put together. And then some of the things that I've described, we've evolved into that. But safety is a primary program that we work on, because whether you're in Maine or Utah, a small ski area or an XL ski area, the safety concerns are the same. And when it comes to safety, it's always collaboration over competition. So we do a ton of work in that field.
That makes sense. So the NSAA is pivotal to ski area safety and messaging, and even created the responsibility code, which we need stuff like that. And I don't think we want to talk about COVID anymore, but you guys also created the COVID protocols that were adopted by pretty much everybody on your association, that I think were pivotal in making sure we still had a ski season, because that was on the blocks, right? It wasn't for sure we were going to have a ski season the last year or two. So that was especially, right after the pandemic happened in the 2021 season. So thank you for that. And I think we can skip over that because I think we're all happy to move on from COVID and its effects. So one thing really quick, let's just touch on, I'm assuming that NSAA gathers funds from your members. So the members pay to be part of the trade association. Is that how you fund your operation?
Yeah, so the bulk of our revenue comes from our members. They pay annual dues. We also, I mentioned those shows and education type events. People register, so there's some money, and then there's a bunch of organizations across the country who hire us to put on their shows. Great. Or to help coordinate their shows. And we also have a lot of really long-standing supportive sponsors. So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And how many folks work for the NSAA?
There's 13 of us.
Really? Gosh, you guys feel a lot bigger than that. Congratulations. And our listeners, obviously, Kelly is a woman, and that's something I want to talk about right here at the beginning of the show. And I think there'll be the themes throughout. So are you the first female CEO of the SAA?
Actually, no.
Great.
Many years ago, I don't know the exact year, but the Rowans, David Rowan from Ski Area Management, the magazine, he was at the helm, and his wife stepped in and took over for a year. So
that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're very happy that you're the second, and hopefully many more to come in succession. And the blunt question is, what is being a woman like in this male-dominated industry? Especially on the industrial side of it, I feel like it really is male, all business in the U.S. But we'll take a step back and just talk about the U.S. ski industry. What is it like being a woman in this male-dominated industry?
Yeah, well, it's changed tremendously. I jumped into the ski industry in the 80s. So back then, it really was some of the things you hear people say, like boys club and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was more like that. I can say that my experience in the ski industry is I've always been treated with respect, but I've talked to many women who don't feel that way, and that is really unfortunate. I think that one thing I didn't realize I was doing for many, many years, I was at Mount Snow in Vermont for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
I was trying to overcompensate for my gender because I was not trained in things like grooming, snowmaking, lift operations. I would try to overcompensate either by learning as much as I could or being out on the mountain as much as I could to see what was going on. And just kind of working really, really hard instead of sometimes working smart. So what I'm hearing from some of the women, the up and coming, the next generation of female leaders, is that they're being a lot more smart about it. And I'm just so encouraged by that. For instance, I worked a 6-day work week because that's what we did for how many years. And I quite honestly demanded that of many of my staff. Right. And I just love like this new generation of women are saying that's not necessary. We can be more flexible. So for me, it's been a great experience, and especially right now, I'm just so encouraged to see so many women in leadership roles, and having them have a seat at the table. I think the future of how our ski areas operate and look are going to be a lot different because women have different ideas and goals for attracting guests to the mountain.
Yeah, so I'm very excited for that, and I think that women's perspective on and how to operate a larger organization is really sound, is really strong, and I'm really looking forward to more and more of that coming around. And I do, what I was hearing from you, I want to sort of boil down into something maybe simpler. I'm curious if you agree, and you're hearing this from a lot of leaders that I talk to that are women, including my fiance owns her own company. You hear it from Michelle Obama, but basically, being a woman in business, you're playing you're playing the video game on level 10, where the men are often playing on level 1. And that might have been something you felt when you were reflecting to us about how you were working extra hours, you were overcompensating, because you do often get less opportunity and more scrutinized as a woman. Would you agree with that? That often happens to women in business and women in the ski industry, that you have to play at a higher level than your male counterparts?
I'd say that you're right on, and women do. But looking back at my team that I was working with, I didn't need to.
Okay.
They had my back, and that was something that I chose to do. So I think it depends on where you work. And when you are surrounded by a great team, I was very lucky at Mount Snow that I was surrounded by a super team who quite honestly worked just as hard, if not harder than I did, then you're going to be okay. But women, for the most part, when that level 10, for me, that level 10 is, it doesn't turn off when you leave. So I was raising children, and certainly my husband was there, and he's fantastic, but it's just all those other things. And for instance, if you have one day off, what do you do on that day? Especially like when your kid's a ski racer and they have a race.
Oh my gosh.
Do you do laundry and get food so y'all can eat? or do you go to the ski race and stand on the hill for, 4 hours?
Right back in the
So
ski industry.
yeah, so
Mhm.
so it's juggling all of those things that made it difficult, but I wouldn't I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it. It was all a great learning experience for me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So you say that you really haven't felt discrimination or exclusion, but some women that you've talked to in the industry have. And so if you have any stories or any insight on that, we'd love to hear it. But I'm curious, is that something that might keep women out of the ski industry? Is the ski industry welcoming enough to women?
I think in have I been discriminated against? Yes, I have.
Okay.
I absolutely have, and it's and when it happens, it has a real negative mental effect on you.
Oh, yeah.
You take it to heart, and it hurts. And
is it, essentially somebody pushing the idea towards you that you shouldn't be here, you don't belong here, you're an other?
yeah, there's absolutely too many women running this resort type comment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it gets back to you because everything does in the ski industry.
Oh, yeah, it's a small world.
What happens after I ski?
Yes,
you,
yes.
you hear it all. So yeah, it hurts, but you grow thick skin. The best lesson I learned is to just push that aside and keep on going. Keep on going. As long as you keep the vision, your goals, your purpose in mind, you have to let some of that fall off, or it'll drive you nuts.
So, the welcoming feeling is something I'm curious about, and I haven't talked to enough women about this. Is the U.S. ski industry welcoming enough to women, and how could they be more so?
My experience is that they are welcoming to women, but I can't speak for all women because as I go around the ski industry and I visit so many different ski areas, it's different. So there's some ski areas I go to who, when you think about sustainability, they're embracing it. They have programs. They're doing so many amazing things. And I have other ski areas that I talk to, and they're like, Kelly, I respect what you're doing, but I don't believe in climate change. I don't believe that humans have caused it. And I respect their view because I respect them as a ski area operator, even though I may not scientifically agree with it. So right. I have to understand that there's different levels of welcoming going on out there, and that some women probably have an experience that it's close to mine, and there's probably others who have really had to struggle, and maybe who have decided not to pursue a leadership role because they haven't felt welcomed.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, and I think we can, in general, say that we need to get better at it. I think it's definitely, the industry is more welcoming to men than women, and it's something that we need to work on, and we need to find ways to do so. But let's move on to the numbers, because I'm really excited. And I think, if we had an applause track or button, I would hit it after this statement. So 2021-22 had the most skiers and riders in U.S. history. So applause track right now. And I think that's huge because, the ski industry has been relatively flat for quite a long time. So here we're going to start jumping into the numbers. So I think this stuff is fascinating, and I think it's really gripping, and the numbers lead to more numbers. And I think it helps us all get a really good understanding for what the ski industry is, what it has been, and where it's going. So let's just start with, we had the record number of visits last year. So how many skier visits do we have in the USA last year?
Last year, we had 60.7 million skier visits.
Wow, that's insane. And what has been that, the 10-year average or so?
I actually didn't bring that number with me today, but the last 10 years, we've been around, 56. And then the last 4 years have been more closer to that 60 mark, with the exception of the year that we closed early, 2020, when we basically closed all the skiers down in March to address the pandemic.
So let's jump into that. How do we define a skier visit?
So a skier visit, quite simply, is the number of days that you ski times the number of people. So if my husband and I head out to snowbird for 2 days, it's 2 people times 2 days, and that's 4 skier visits.
Yeah, so it's essentially one person goes skiing or riding one time at a ski resort in the U.S.
Correct.
So 60.7 million, fantastic. So quite a bit above average. And then how many individuals skied or snowboarded in the U.S. last season?
The number of people, individual participants, 10.7 million. And that was also an all-time record.
That's also a record. And that I did do the numbers on. It looks like our average the last 10 years about 9.4. So quite a bit up. So that's fantastic to see that. And how do you think the pandemic boosted skier visits in the U.S. the past 2 seasons? Because the past 2 seasons were quite good.
Exactly. And as you saw, all outdoor recreation popped during the pandemic. People wanted to get outside of their homes with remote school and remote work. Americans were more flexible. And so the ski industry saw the same pop in skier visits and participation. People wanted to get out. And the great thing about it is that many ski areas had capacity limits. Sometimes they had to stay within a certain number that they agreed upon with maybe their town or their state, their municipality. So Saturday might be booked. Americans were willing to come later in the day on Saturday. Maybe they had 2 sessions. I'm thinking Blue Mountain in Pennsylvania, or they were willing to come night skiing. So what we saw across the country was that we did a bunch more skier visits, but they were spread out. And that is the best scenario that any skier could wish for.
Yeah, and that's something that was reflected on our side, being a company that helps ski areas with marketing. A lot of the bigger resorts were coming to us saying, help us market midweek. Don't even talk about the weekends. We don't even have space for them on the weekends. So let's push them into the week. So I bet that's what we saw too, is more weekday skiers because people and riders, because people had more flexibility.
Right.
And so which regions saw the most skier visits last year? Was there any region that sort of popped, that had more than expected, that had more than normal?
Right. Well, as everybody would guess, Rocky Mountains, they're the top region. They do like 25 million skier visits.
With Colorado being on the top of that, right? Colorado gets the most skier visits.
Yeah, I'd have to fact check that, but I'm
okay.
I'm almost sure you're correct. I mean, if you think about the ski areas that
right.
are in Colorado. Which one do you think is the second largest?
Second largest, gosh, I want to lean towards the Northeast because there's so many people, but I think I heard that California was involved. Did California or the California region?
No, your gut was correct. Northeast is number 2 at 12.6 million, and then the Pacific Southwest at 7.4 million. So you're right on.
But still nowhere near the Northeast. That is impressive. Yeah, I think that concentration of large cities that we have, the Boston, New York, the large cities that we have up there, really people were getting out. And I love to hear that. And I love to see that. So those are the regions that saw the most. So this year we had the record 60.7 million participants, skier visits in the US, which is amazing. And what were the other top 5 or so biggest years for participation in the US ski industry?
All right. Well, we hit 60.5 million in 2011 and 2008. And yeah, good 2011 and 8 good snow years. Not surprising.
No. And yeah, 2011 was epic. I mean, just one of the best, my best season personally.
We almost hit 60 million in 2010. We came in at 59.8. And then in 2019, we hit 59.3. So those are the top years. And we did some forecasting. If we had not closed early during the pandemic year of 2020, we were on track to hit 60 million that year.
Really? Wow. So that was a big year, even without the pandemic. Interesting. I don't remember that being a great snow year either. The other years all seem to correlate. 2011 was a big snow year. 2008, I think, was a great snow year. 2010 was definitely a good snow year. And 2019 also, especially in the West, was ridiculous. So is that something that you guys see and correlate, that big snow year, more participation?
Absolutely, but it's shifting a little bit.
How so?
Well, this year we recorded our best year on record, but it wasn't a great snow year.
But then we had the pandemic, right? So maybe that
year 2 of the pandemic.
right.
Right. So we definitely have that pandemic surge still continuing, but it will be very interesting to see in the future if this trend continues, because we also introduced the Epic Pass in 2009 and the Icon Pass in 2019.
Oh,
so
true.
What effect is that having on the industry?
That's really interesting. So let's just pretend those are the two main factors, the conglomerate passes, Icon and Epic, Icon being a new offering. And it seems like since Icon's been offered, the numbers have been ridiculously good. So that's good to hear. And then that in conjunction with the pandemic, less opportunity to travel abroad, the Canadian border been complicated, all borders being complicated, and obviously the pandemic giving more people flexibility and giving more people the opportunity to explore their country, state, region a bit more. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure that's what you good folks are guessing as well. But I hadn't even thought about the Icon Pass coming into play as well. And then we can't rule out the Indy Pass. Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely, the Indy Pass and all of those great kind of little packs and packages that you can get that make skiing a bit more affordable. Even though snow will always be king, having great snowmaking temperatures is also part of that, figuring it all out. If you don't have good snowmaking temps, it doesn't matter how many passes you sell, it's not going to be one of our top years.
No, absolutely. Well, let's get into that, because we're kind of touching that already. We already said it, but let's put you on the spot with it. How important is snowfall to the U.S. ski industry?
It's super important, and it is king. It will always be king. But as we just discussed, it's not as important, or at least our numbers are showing that it's not as important as it was maybe 15 years ago.
And I guess that's something we're hoping for too. I meant to say in that, just a few seconds ago, a previous conversation about the conglomeration of the ski industry and the pandemic leading to better numbers. Hopefully, as the pandemic ends, there's a hangover might not be the right word. Hopefully, there's some retention there. Hopefully, we got enough people out, some new people exposed, people learn. Oh, wow, I really do like staying near home and skiing in this area. So I think that's what we're all really hoping for. And do you folks have any projections on that? Do we hope and dream that these huge numbers might maintain?
We certainly hope and dream, but we ask this question a lot when we're on the road, and we've been doing our fall tour, and I've asked rooms full of people that exact question. And overall, the industry operators think that there's going to be a decline from that pandemic surge. They also agree that if we take advantage of those folks who have come back out, we have an opportunity of keeping them engaged, but we're watching it closely.
I'm really curious, and I'm going to be talking to marketing directors bluntly about that as we finalize our contracts with ski resorts this year. What are your strategies to maintain? Because there's going to be a slump. Is it going to be a mass exodus where people, that we've seen sort of with the airline industry and some other things where people are so excited that they can travel now, they have money saved up, they have energy for that type of trip saved up, and boom, everybody leaves? Or hopefully the opposite will be true. There'll be some retention, hopefully large retention. It's probably going to end up being somewhere in the middle. So we'll go back. And so it's sort of it's a fun conversation, but there's no finite answers.
No, I would just add to that one of the detractors is the kids are back in school.
Right.
And when they're back in school, they have all of their activities. And when mom and dad are traveling maybe to kids' activities for school or supporting them, after school, then they can't make it to the mountains. That was one of the big differences that we saw during the pandemic, is that the kids didn't have all those activities. So now mom and dad could pile everybody in the car and they could get out. So we're pretty sure that will be one of the areas that we lose some ground.
definitely going to lose some ground there because you got to take the kids to soccer practice. That makes sense.
Right.
And they weren't even playing soccer last year, so we could drive up to the ski hill on a Tuesday. And we're probably even schooling from home and all that. So interesting. So yeah, hopefully, there's sound practices in place and strategies being used to retain as many people as possible. But there's going to be a slump, most likely. How big that slump is the question. So coming back to snowfall pivotal for the ski industry. Snowfall's king. Snowfall's number one. And then, hand in hand with snowfall, as you talked about, is snowmaking temperatures. How important and how critical has snowmaking become to the U.S. ski industry?
Snowmaking is just as critical as Mother Nature
Mm-hmm.
and the natural snowfall. And it's been around. A lot of people don't realize that snowmaking has been around, since the 60s and 70s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so snowmaking has been critical to the ski industry for decades. And I know you want to talk about the number of ski areas that are open, but just jumping ahead, what we'll discuss is there's been a decline in the amount of ski areas that are open. Now, we all follow the Moss ski areas.
Yeah, well, it's like from 760 to 470 or something like that.
Right, and
Mm-hmm.
if you talk to the folks who are really kind of leading the charge during that time, my predecessor Michael Berry, who ran
Mm-hmm.
NSAA for many years, a lot of that had to do with the importance of snowmaking, but it was a big capital investment. So if you think about a lot of those ski areas that were built, if they couldn't invest in snowmaking and compound that maybe with a year or two of poor natural snowfall, a lot of those ski areas closed. So it's been a big influencer for many, many years. And certainly there are regions in the country that don't have a lot of snowmaking. They don't need it. But there are other regions that their ski areas are 100%. They have 100% snowmaking.
Some people, from what you're speaking of now, might build the equation that over time, let's say over the last 50 years, we have less ski areas because less ski areas can make artificial snow. And that maybe could be contributed to climate change. Where's your mindset with that simple equation I just drew up?
Yeah, no, a lot of people do draw that parallel. And we have no data that shows that the ski areas that have closed, and we research it very closely,
Mm-hmm.
have closed due to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, as our globe continues to warm, there probably will be some that close due to climate change if we don't get our act together and start addressing this problem. To date, think about like golf courses. I think that's one that more people can relate to. So many golf courses were built, and the same thing happened with the ski areas. After World War II, there were so many ski areas that were built on enthusiasm and passion for skiing, and probably more than we really needed. So a lot of those smaller community-based have closed, and I feel like there's a greater balance for the number of ski areas to skiers now than maybe back in the 90s. So we've been pretty consistent since the 90s with the amount of ski areas. We're stable now, but there was that fall from 700 to like 500 from back in the 90s.
And most of those ski areas, my understanding, were small, maybe a rope tow, maybe one chairlift, very small ski areas. And again, there's a lot of theories on why they may or may not be here anymore. But it just seemed, for whatever reason, smaller ski areas didn't survive that sort of critical period in the 80s and leading into the 90s. And so, yeah, so I think that's really interesting. And I think, that equation could be thought about too, is lots of small ski resorts plus climate change equals less ski resorts potentially. And again, we don't know for sure. We don't have the data to back that up, but those things are happening simultaneously. So there may be some overlap there. What are ski areas doing to adapt to climate change and to combat climate change that you think is significant from your perspective?
To adapt, I would say the number one is snowmaking. So
Yes.
What we've seen is a shift to low E, to looking at every inch of pipe on your mountain. You want it to be as efficient as possible, no leaks. It's the same as our infrastructure across the country for water. You don't want leaks. The same with the air that is supplying the air to the hydrants. You don't want leaks. So low E, being as efficient as possible from pumping to the end source. But they're also doing a lot of other things at their resorts. Several of the larger multi-resort ski companies have set goals. For instance, net zero by 2030.
Mm-hmm.
So that's everything from,
and that's carbon net zero for our listeners. Continue. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And that's everything from landfill to having programs for sustainability on their mountains and the natural resources. So, for instance, at NSAA, we do awards annually. Yes. So luckily, we get to see some of the things that the ski industry is doing on the sustainability front. They're called Golden Eagle Awards.
Uh-huh.
So think of Jiminy Peak in Massachusetts. They installed a wind turbine when people were like, "You're installing a wind turbine?" Solar. The ski area that I worked at, we installed solar so you can have credits back. And that's something that a lot of ski areas are looking at, solar. Electric vehicles. Think everything from your fleet that you have, trucks and cars, to your grooming machines. Mm-hmm. It is endless. If you think of your town and what it's doing, skiers are doing all of that and probably a bit more.
That's fantastic. I love to hear that. Because I think that we all have to be smart and forward thinking about how all this happens, how climate change is affecting, and the adaptation is key. And it does seem to be, as you stated, the number one adaptation is snowmaking. And I know the Midwest ski resorts especially have become extremely consistent with their opening dates, how they operate, because they rely on snowmaking so much. But that's a good thing because they're open when they say they're going to be open, and because they have the cold temperatures out there. So they seem, some folks have really ran with it. And when you say low E, I believe that you're saying low energy. So really making sure that these snowmaking systems that the resorts have are as efficient as possible. So making sure we're not losing any energy in that. And that is a really great way to combat climate change and adapt to it.
Right. And I would add, I'm glad you brought up the Midwest, because the Midwest, the Southeast, the Northeast, one of their challenges is that they have these frames of good snowmaking weather, and sometimes they can be very, very short. So they have to produce as much snow as they possibly can during these short windows. And that's one of the ways that they have adapted. By making sure that their systems are ready to go and that they're as efficient as possible, that they have the water to supply. It just become, automation has really helped, because if you have to fire up an entire snowmaking system and it's all manual, it's a lot of person power. So if you can start adding some automation, that's going to reduce the amount of people that actually have to fire up each hydrant versus maybe 10% or 20%, or some skiers 100% automation.
And let's recognize and say thank you to the incredible people who are out there all night making this happen. So the human beings actually on the hill making snowmaking happen, usually at night too, right? Really difficult hours, really terrible temperatures and weather. So thank you to all of them who do that. And let's flip from ice to fire. So snowmaking's key, helping us get through climate change as things get warmer and we get modified or less snowfall. And then fire has been a big issue. So Sierra at Tahoe, a great ski resort on the west slope of the Sierras near South Lake Tahoe, essentially burned down last year. So they lost a huge amount of the trees, a lot of their equipment. They had to close for a season. They're opening again this year. Thank goodness. It was the Caldor fire, I believe, in 2021. And so I'm a little curious on, what perspective do you have on at the NSAA that other ski resorts might go through this? What's our thinking, and is there any mitigation or just ideology we have around how wildfires are going to begin affecting ski areas in the Western U.S. especially?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not. They will.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and
it's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad. And when I was talking about some of the ski area education that we do, wildfires is part of it. Wildfire, being prepared for wildfires, something that Sierra Tahoe was. They did a lot to prepare, and it probably saved a lot of the infrastructure that wasn't affected. But that's something that when we get together as a ski industry, there are sessions, hours and hours of sessions talking about this. This is where NSAA can work to help the ski area and the U.S. Forest Service with that very vital relationship that exists between the two. A lot of times we're in the middle advocating for the ski area, because at the end of the day, once they start spinning those lifts or even making the snow, they are busy. So we can be working behind the scenes to advocate for them. And that's exactly what has happened since Sierra Tahoe. And we watched several webcams this summer, and it was just very scary. I can't even imagine being there at the ski area. Luckily, so far we're good, but you just never know. It's going to continue to happen.
And that's really difficult because I think that's pretty much all we have is luck. There's not a whole lot we can do. I mean, I know that the sort of the number one ideology right now is let's try to, clean up the forest. Let's get the underbrush out of there. I actually did that on a crew once in Lake Tahoe, where you go through the chainsaw, you cut down everything that's small, put it in piles, and they burn it in the wintertime. Are there any mitigation strategies that ski areas are going to try to use to avoid burning down?
Absolutely. And they have been doing it for years, and they're doing exactly what you're talking about. They're creating that defensible space around their buildings. They're building buildings that hopefully can withstand a fire. They're using their snowmaking systems and turning them on and basically wetting down. So all of those have been going on for years. And just like we have best practices for everything from how to run our parking lots to how to get people through our rental shops as efficiently as possible, the same is done in the ski industry for wildfire mitigation.
It's so challenging. So, with climate change, here comes more fires that can burn you down in the summer. And then from the exact opposite end, potentially warmer temperatures and less snow. So, but it's great to hear from you all these strategies that are in place and ideas that are in place to help try to battle this, to keep our industry as strong as possible. So, Kelly, one thing that I think is important to a lot of folks is what are we going to do moving forward? What can we do about climate change moving forward, and what might be the measures that we could take via advocacy?
That is so important, especially right now. Science is telling us that we have the tools to slow down the warming of our planet, but we have to start now. And NSAA, I mentioned earlier that advocacy is one of the things that we help our ski areas with. And we have been in DC for years.
Oh, wow.
Clanging the climate action bell. And this year felt so good when they finally passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which it was the first time that we had climate action legislation. So there's hope. Is it enough? Absolutely not. We have to keep engaging. And that's something that NSAA does and our skiers do. When we go to DC, we bring ski area operators with us because they want to hear from the people who are running the resort. So for instance, last year, John Rice from Sierra Tahoe, he was in DC working on behalf of the ski industry. And they listen to people like John. So it's something that we have to continue working on. One great asset that we have is those 10.7 million participants.
Yes.
If you think about those folks and the people who ski at ski areas, they have a voice. especially when pulled together. So we do have a responsibility code for climate for our ski area participants, and it's just getting the word out. So that's something that we work on every day, quite honestly.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate that. That's very helpful. We love that you're in Washington doing all you can to lobby there and make changes, because we need that. And specifically in the Inflation Reduction Act, is there anything that's written about ski areas, or are you under an umbrella of some sort of recreational outdoor industry that there is going to be some funding that could help ski areas in the US?
Yeah, actually, some people on my team are digging into some of the parts and pieces of that act that could be utilized by ski areas. It's a little too early to tell, but overall, it is going to help. You know, ski areas, we have an impact, but if you were to create a pie and you had the ski area slice, it's teeny tiny. That's not to say that we have to do our part. But what's exciting about that act is that it's going to put the tools out there to start taking care of some of the bigger problems that our country faces. And that's good for everyone.
So I think that's huge. So we have, the 10.7 million people participating in the U.S. ski industry. And I was just reading from the SIA that there might be another 700,000 people who are also backcountry skiing. So that there might be some overlap though, because a lot of them probably also go to ski resorts. So so maybe we'll be generous and say 11 million. So 11 million people, so somewhere around 3% of the US population. So that's huge, and that's something that you can really lobby with. And I know that the ski industry employs a lot of people and brings in many billions of dollars to the US economy. So all of that hopefully is helping us advocate for climate change or advocate against climate change and try to mitigate what's happening moving forward. Because if climate change goes the direction that it appears to be going, ski areas are going to be truly compromised, which is going to lead to less money for the U.S. economy, less people being employed. So it's great that we have these numbers that we can use to throw some muscle around in Washington. So we appreciate you out there doing that for us on our behalfs. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by your Northern California Toyota dealers. Hit the trail and discover your next Tahoe adventure in a Toyota Tundra TRD Pro Hybrid, featuring an available iForce Max hybrid engine that generates an electrifying 437 horsepower, wow, and 583 pounds per foot of torque. The TRD Pro also tows up to 12,000 pounds, so you can take the adventure with you. It's made for endurance and made for the mountain. Visit toyota.com/NorCal for more details and start your next adventure in a brand new Toyota, the official vehicle of Palisades Tahoe. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Vail Mountain. Vail is celebrating its 60th anniversary this season. That's 60 years of powder days, back bowl skiing, ice bars, and new experiences. No matter how many times you've skied these slopes, this season is all about celebrating then, now, and forever. And as a part of the celebrations, Vail will be hosting the National Brotherhood of Skiers for their annual summit in February. So go ahead, plan your next visit to Vail and help them celebrate what's shaping up to be a legendary season. And so I want to switch back to the human side of it. And I'm just going to hit you with a blunt question because you hear this all the time. Due to, not enough people are skiing and riding in the US. Is the US ski industry dying?
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not.
And why do you think people say that? Because I think a lot of times what people's argument is, well, the US population is going up and the ski industry, participation rate is staying relatively flat. And what do you see?
All I can think is they look at a chart and the growth isn't steep enough for them. I mean, that as we like instant gratification. We like to look at our 401k and see, a steep line.
Yes.
And of course, our financial advisors would say, you're better off to, look over 20 years and see a steady line. Mm-hmm. And That's what we have in the ski industry. So back in 2000, a bunch of ski area operators got together and they developed the model for growth to really look at the number of people who were skiing and riding and prepare and plan for the future. And right then we were around 52 million skier visits. Today, we have a new goal that we set in 2018. We have a growth committee at NSAA, and that goal is 60 million by 2026. And what we want is we want a rolling 3-year average. We understand there's going to be years that we dip down because of whatever.
Well, as we talked about snow and pandemics,
pandemic,
new passes.
Yeah, but for the most part, we want to be around 60 million. So the fact that in just 22 years, our new goal that we're shooting for is it's not around 52 million, meaning that we would have been stagnant. It's around 60 million or 3% of the US population. So we're kind of like the tortoise versus the hare. We're happy with slow and steady. And we also take into consideration other health indicators. They're very, very important in ski area operations. For instance, guest satisfaction.
Yes.
Right. Guest satisfaction, workforce, financial profitability, capital investment. There are several health factors that we look at. And when we put those all together, right now, this moment in time, the ski industry is healthy.
So the equation that the NSAA has come up with to basically judge the health of the ski industry, right now we're in the green. It looks like the industry is healthy. Your goal by 2026 is 60 million, and that's 60 million skier visits, which again is one skier or snowboarder visiting one ski resort for one day. So 60 million, and we already hit that this year, a bit above that, almost hit 61. So that's great. We're on track. So that's huge. So what might be some complicated scenarios for you? I was looking at one of the charts that you have talking about Generation Z, which is our youngest generation right now in the U.S. And it looks like they're trending below the historical average. And so please tell us a little bit about that. What's happening there and what can we do to change that?
Yeah, we're watching that generation, Gen Z, and we look at how each generation has participated, and they're trending a little below the millennials. So we're watching that very carefully, especially because we know that the earlier that you can introduce a youth to snow sports, the longer they'll stick with it. So youth programs have always been really important, and that's one that we're keeping an eye on. That would be, I put that in the challenge bucket.
Okay, so Gen Z is tracking a bit below the millennials, so we want to make sure to keep that rolling. And then you mentioned, we'll come back to the baby boomers here in a second, because I think they're aging out now, which is, I think, complicated because they're a big chunk of the industry. But let's hit really quick, because I think it's so fascinating. I'm looking at the pie graph you have right now. So age when first tried skiing or riding. So here it says 60% started at 14 years or younger. So the importance of a youth trial could not be more clear, says your graph here. So could you speak a little bit more to that, please?
Yeah, we've been tracking this data for a very long time. And when we look at our data and we ask them the year that you started skiing or riding, the younger they are, the more apt they are to still be skiing and riding as an adult. So we know that the younger that we can start them, the more apt they're going to stay in snow sports, and probably, we don't ask this question, but probably teach their kids to ski. Anyone that skis and rides knows that it's generational. You can figure that out on a chairlift ride, because sometimes you're going up and we all ask, oh, who are you here with today? Where are you from? That type of thing. And I've been on the chairlift tons of times with 3 generations.
Yes, no, kids, me too. You're right. I love
parents,
that.
Grandparents. So it's very generational.
So yeah, so just to reiterate, so the younger we can get them started, the better, right? It's the cradle to grave mentality. So if we get them started younger, they're very much more likely to continue skiing and riding, and hopefully show their kids to ski and ride. So let's all drag those young people up to the mountains as soon as possible.
And the reason that's a big concern right now is that millennials are trending below average right now as young people starting. And so it's going to be harder to get that generation in. And then you might be lower than average for a whole generation, which, would take quite a long time. And as generations go, it looks like, Gen Z is a little bit below average. Millennials look like the numbers are pretty good.
So Gen Z, I just want to say we did have a little pop during the pandemic. So that
great.
That's fantastic. And then we also have regions of the country where youth are strong. In the Midwest, guess what their average age is? 17.
Really? Oh my
Fantastic.
gosh. I would know if you asked me again, I would have guessed, 37.
Right. And that's about the age, like Northeast and whatnot. But in the Midwest, like you said, it's so baked in, it's part of their culture. It just shows the importance of that region to skiing in the US.
Huge. Yeah. Huge. Wow. That's so interesting. So 17 is their average age. So they're doing spectacularly with Gen Z. So that's really great to hear. I love that. And then baby boomers are aging out a bit. Is there a concern there that a huge group of, I don't know if baby boomers is the largest or one of the larger generations as far as numbers go in our ski industry. And as they age out, is that a concern?
It's a concern. But I think it's something that the ski industry, we've been aware of it for a very long time. And skier operators, we're optimists.
We have to be.
We're always looking at the pipeline versus of who's kind of going to be riding off into the sunset. So we just have to, like we talked about, we have to focus on that youth getting them in. But the baby boomers, they're really an important, what I like about the baby boomers and the opportunity that exists is that they've really taken to skiing and they're out there, they're skiing, they're riding. When we retire now, we don't sit on the couch. People who retire, empty nesters, they're more active. And that is a really good sign for the ski industry in years to come.
Because those people have a lot of time and can get out on the hill and give us a lot of skier visits and hopefully influence the generations that they are involved with, like their children and their grandchildren. So that's great. And well, let's continue with the demographics because I think diversity is such an important thing for the ski industry, ski and snowboard industry. So right now, our demographics, I'm looking at the chart you folks have right here, and it looks like overall, the ski industry is still somewhere around 70 to 80% white, and that we're still struggling with people of color. And I'm just curious, what can the ski industry do? What do we need to do to create a more diverse demographic in the ski industry?
Yeah, so we're most diverse in those areas that are close to metropolitan areas. So that makes perfect sense. And we're less diverse in places that are more remote. Well, I would say that education is really important. Mm-hmm. We need to educate our staff at ski areas, and I can get into that. But one thing that Henry Rivers, who's the president of National Brotherhood of Skiers, says is that he's repeatedly called on the ski industry to start by diversifying their staff. And I think he is right on, because no matter where you go, whatever business you're frequenting, you want to see people that are working there that you can resonate with. You want to buy products from people that you have a connection with. Your favorite brands, often you dig right in and you learn about that founder or what are their core values. And if you go somewhere and you don't quite feel like you fit in, you may not go back. And not to the fault of the ski industry, but we're a bit like a big club.
Yes.
We're cliquey probably without even knowing that. And we're probably a bit judgy. I'm thinking of some social media out there that may make fun of our participants.
Oh, yes, lots of that.
Yeah, that's not cool. And when we can realize the impact that we're having on somebody and their inability to show up as they are and feel comfortable, we're setting barriers. So if through that education, we can come to understand what some of those barriers are and break them down, not only for our guests, but for our workforce, then I think we really will have a more inclusive and welcoming mountains for people to come to. And it's going to happen. Already our youth is minority white. So this is just the
That's great.
opportunity is, yeah, the opportunity is there. So I'd like to get ahead of it. And that's something that NSAA is trying to do is to help give our ski areas the resources and the education they need so they can start being more inclusive. We did a survey of ski area staff members, and one of the questions we asked is, have you ever had any training in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion? And over 50% said, no, I haven't.
Right.
And that's exactly how I would have answered prior to 2020, when I actually started having discussions and started educating myself. So one of the things that NSAA is doing, because we know that ski areas may not have the resources to put together education that is created by people who actually are experts in this field, we're providing them with some free education so they can share it with their team and start the process. It's a journey.
That is huge. I'm so glad that you folks are already on top of that. That's great, because if that is something that's available to all 300 of your participants, that's just going to get into a lot of eyes and ears and minds at a quick rate. And, as that sort of training becomes more standardized in an industry, I just think that's fantastic. And you guys are obviously the leaders of that for them. And we interviewed Henry Rivers, the president of the National Brotherhood of Skiers, on this podcast. And so it's an organization for Black skiers and riders, and really interesting, similar things he talked about. And one thing I really like that I would have never even thought of, not in a million years, that he says, when I go to a ski resort, it's even cultural. They don't have the type of food that our culture enjoys. They don't have the type of music that our culture enjoys. They don't have even like the sort of architecture, it's like, and then the people that work there don't look like us. They don't share our culture. So I thought that was so interesting. I would have never thought of the food. So I think that there's so many things that ski industry, the ski resorts can do, and some small stuff, like changing the menu. That's easy to do. They do that all the time anyway. So I think that it's going to be really interesting. And I hope that his voice gets amplified out there, because let's get Black and brown people working there. Let's get their cultures reflected in the food and in the architecture, in the music and everything we do, because whether we like it or not, this ski industry really feels like it comes from Europe, right? And so there's a very Eurocentric feel out there, and we need to change that. And part of why we need to change that is because the ski industry needs more people. And so Henry also talks bluntly about, if you want to survive, you need these people of color. You need them in the industry, and we need more women. Let's talk about women too here in a second, but let's focus on people of color. By 2050, the forecast is that the U.S. is going to be minority white, so there'll be more brown people than white people. And so you're not going to bring those people. You're not going to welcome them in to our industry. We're going to die. So it's a survival tactic at this point, And so he's almost saying, whether you like this idea or not, you have to do it business-wise.
Exactly. And I think you and I talked about this, when you talk about that European influence, it's cool. It's fun. The 10th Mountain Division guys came back and they built these amazing, iconic ski areas with their vision and their passion. But now let's imagine if the people at the table who are building out the next generation of ski areas, or the upgrades to those ski areas, are people of color, are women, you have youth and senior influence, you have people from the LGBTQ community. How about your adaptive center? What if they have a seat at the table? How different will it look? And that to me is exciting, because as much as I love to go skiing and I love all the traditions, it's kind of the same everywhere. So I agree with Henry. I would welcome some other cultures and ideas, because I don't even know what I'm missing, quite honestly. So I'm completely on board with what you just said.
Yeah, I think we all are. I think it'd be so interesting. And there's some real opportunities. There's ski resorts that are very close to Los Angeles, for example, Big Bear. And I think they're already doing a lot of this. is, you could change your menu, you could change, who's working there and all that. And because you have a huge amount of Latinos that live in the Los Angeles area, Southern California area, and other places. I've been talking to the gentleman at Vominos Outside in Bend, Oregon, an organization that is focused on getting brown people and people of color up into the mountains, but keeping them there, really putting a lot of time and energy. And that Bend community has a ton of Latinos. And so that's really cool to see that reflected in the mountains, and Mount Bachelor is really working with them. So I think it's just going to be a snowball effect, because I think once it gets more standard at some of the bigger resorts, it's just going to become commonplace and almost a basic requirement. So I am very much looking forward to that. And then I'd love to just jump really quick into your thoughts about just women. So I'm looking at your chart here from the NSAA, and it looks like women are around really consistently, actually 37% of the participants in the ski areas in the US, and men are around 63%, very consistently across all the regions. And I'm curious, why do you think women trend below men for participation at ski areas in the US?
Well, women, when you look at ability, and I'm not sure that I provided you with these numbers, but when you look at ability, the majority of women are not expert skiers. They tend to be more beginner and intermediate. And when we ask people some of the barriers to skiing, they include things like it's too cold, I don't want to get hurt. So if we as a ski industry are really out there selling steep and deep, I mean, it's easy to do because it's so darn cool. For the mainstream person, that can be intimidating. And if they envision themselves in that situation, they may say, I'm just going to stay home, or I'm going to stay back at the condo. And I can understand that, because I grew up skiing in New Hampshire, in Vermont, and moving out west, and now having the ability to ski all over the country, that intimidation is real. I have a fear of heights. Don't ask me why I ski and go on chairlifts.
Oh, I have a fear of heights too.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah, I really feel it in my lower gut. It can really hit me sometimes.
Yeah, so combine that with I've never been into speed in anything I do. So I definitely prefer the intermediate experience. I love being at ski areas, but that anxiety sometimes, prevents me from wanting to participate, because I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to keep up with the amazing skiers who are like, yeah, let's go out. So right. I can understand women's intimidation. And I think we as a ski industry can probably do a little better speaking to that category. Of course, I hang out with lots of amazing female skiers, but there is that other category that we can do a better job with.
And we talked about the industry being welcoming or not to women. So I'd love to hear you reflect on that one more time, but also within the realm of how do we get more women skiing and riding? What do you think we need to do? Do we need to be more welcoming? Is there anything we might be able to do?
Welcoming, I mean, for participants and in my time at Mount Snow riding the chairlift with so many people, I feel like we are pretty welcoming to women. I don't know that our programs and our marketing is as welcoming as it could be. Right. So, for instance, if you think about women, and let's say that they're planning a vacation for the family, where do you think, the top picks are?
If women, I'm just imagining very comfortable, luxurious places, that would be great for everybody in the family, like Beaver Creek, Breckenridge. Am I way off?
No, I agree with that. And I also, what I've seen with women that I hang out is a lot of them book beach vacations. Oh,
so I'm so way off. Yes. So your question is basically where would they want to go on a vacation, not just a ski vacation?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Although having gone to Beaver Creek, I would like to go there on a extended vacation, not just for a day trip. Anyway, so the beach, and if you think about the beach, it's easy. You barely have to pack any clothes. Yes. You can sit on the beach, which you've been looking forward to sitting down for 6 months now, and you can watch everything unfold in front of you. So I think that the difference between that and a ski vacation is it's more work. So when you're thinking about everything that you do, you may have a full-time job, and then you have the stuff that you do at home, and then there's the extracurricular. Maybe you're involved with your kids' stuff. Maybe you're on a volunteer thing with your church or in town. When you get a vacation, you want it to be a vacation. In the ski industry, it's a little, a ski trip is a little bit more work. So we, as a ski industry, can make it as simple as possible with things that are attractive, because I'm just as attracted to après ski and fireplace and a glass of red wine as I am to getting up early and getting those first tracks.
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense too. Because, the one thing I was thinking of when you were speaking is at a beach vacation, everybody's in one location too, right? On a ski vacation, people are all over the mountain, literally. So the complexity is manifold. So I get that. That does make sense. So how can we, as a ski industry, make this make a ski trip, a ski vacation, more attractive to family leaders like women? And so how can we simplify it, make it simpler for them, make it easier for them, and all that makes sense. And I'm sure that everybody in the industry is trying to find ways to make that happen. And so let's shift gears here to something we should have talked about a little earlier, because we did touch on it, the consolidation of the ski industry. So this consolidation of the ski industry, in my mind right now, is Icon Pass, Epic Pass, Indy Pass. So these multi-resort passes, and that are under one pass. So you buy one pass and you have access to sometimes over 30 mountains and multiple continents. It's really changed the industry. And I just want to hear your gut reaction here. Has the consolidation of the industry via these multi-passes made the industry better or worse?
I think better. For the consumer, the obvious is the more affordable passes. And they're speaking to that because we're selling more. The passes have also give guests more flexibility. And the flexibility, when you buy a lift ticket, you feel somewhat obligated to get a certain amount of runs in. Whereas when you buy a season's pass, I only got in a couple runs today, and now I'm going to go do that fireplace thing, or, go cross country skiing with some of the people. You do that with absolutely no guilt. So that's cool. And then the ability to move around to different ski areas, it's experiential. And I think that cannot be underestimated. And there's a huge benefit to the ski area also, because they're getting money up front. For some skiers, that really helps them with summer expenses, whether it be your payroll or a capital project that you're working on. And it also takes some of the guesswork out of knowing how many people are going to show up.
Right.
So,
you got the numbers well ahead of time.
Yeah. So I think it is. I think we need more years to look at our skier visit data, but I think we are going to see that these passes are bringing stability to skier visits.
And there's an argument now, as we spoke of before, with Icon Pass specifically coming into the game relatively recently. And since that pass has existed, the number of participants in the U.S. has gone up and stayed up. And then I think, I've interviewed Doug Fish, who created the Indy Pass, and it really does look like the numbers are there too, that the Indy Pass is helping getting more people to these smaller ski resorts who may have been a bit outcompeted with the bigger passes like Icon and Epic before. So you mentioned some of the pros. So basically, it's giving people flexibility. You don't feel the pressure that you have to ski so much. And trust me, as a person who's always had a ski and a season pass, there's a lot of 5-run days or less, especially as I age. So it's nice to have that flexibility. It's nice to not have that pressure. You get more financial investment in these areas. What might be some of the cons, you think, some negatives that may have come from these big conglomerates like Icon and Epic?
Yeah, I think one of the cons I learned at a very young age, when my mother would take me to church a half hour early, and I would whine like, "What are we doing here so early?" And she's like, "Kelly, you can't build the church for Easter Sunday." So capacity is probably the con that's probably out there the most. And there, as a skier operator, you look at your calendar, and there's 20 to 30 potential days when a lot of people are going to show up.
Yeah.
Kids aren't in school. It's when everybody goes on vacation. If you throw in a snowstorm,
Right.
the number increases. If you throw in sun and moderate temperatures, the number increases.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be the con. The great thing about it is we, as ski area operators now, we didn't necessarily back in the 80s have much control over it. They would just show up and you would deal with it. But now with more of us going to RFID and a lot of our guests booking in advance, we now have the technology, if we want, to somewhat regulate that. And that's up to each ski area to decide how they're going to do it. And as we look across the country, everybody does it a little differently.
Essentially how they're going to manage capacity.
Yeah.
So on a day when they know they're going to max out, what do we do here?
Exactly. The tools are there. And there are always going to be those 20 to 30 days that are going to be busy.
Right.
It's the same as if you go to the amusement park on the 4th of July. It's going to be busy.
Essentially holiday centric. Mm-hmm.
You got it.
Yeah. And so that's great. So I like the pros and cons are there. And that I think is reflected in everybody's mentality that people understand, one of the things that could be challenging with these passes is a lot of people bought them. So a lot of people have access. So on these more popular 20 or 30 days a year, it might be a zoo, it might be very busy. So you have to be prepared for that. And luckily there are ways to mitigate that by trying to go midweek, trying to go not on those days and finding ways to basically go skiing when it's not a holiday, when it's not really busy. And I'm curious, just your thoughts on the Indy Pass. We talked about some of the pros here. I think that is really helping small independent resorts, especially with these bigger icon and epic passes competing. So what do you think might be the pros and cons of the Indy Pass? What have you seen from your perspective?
Yeah, I love this. I love this product. I really do. Yeah. And one of the reasons is because I personally love to explore ski areas.
Over 100 resorts now, right?
Right?
Yeah. It's crazy.
And, I love going to small, medium, large ski areas. And again, that may be because of my ability. And so that's my comfort zone to roll into a place that isn't feeling like if I go in the wrong place, I'm going to be in over my head. So it's experiencing, kind of getting the vibe. I can kind of get the vibe in one day. So that's cool. Yeah. And I can cluster it. I can say, I'm going to hit this one, this one, this one. That's my vacation. And then I can look on the map and kind of plan it out for the next one. So I think that is really a fun part of the Indy Pass. Obviously, the price point is great, and folks are looking for a good value. And to me, this has a really nice value.
No, absolutely. The Indy Pass does seem to be all positive, right? And so, and I don't, because when I talk to Doug, some people might want to argue, oh, it could make the small places busy, and it's just that's not really the case. These small spots just don't get a ton of traffic. Again, they might be busy on those 20, 30 days, but they probably were already. So I think any kind of, and I don't want to use the word lifeline, but any kind of benefit that could help these smaller ski areas stay afloat is huge. And it looks like you have something to add.
Well, I was thinking about that. In the way that they have it set up, it's not like you can buy this to replace your season's pass. So if I always ski at I'm trying to think of an Indy.
Red Lodge, Montana.
Yeah. If I always ski at Red Lodge, Montana, I'm not going to buy this as a replacement.
Right. Because you only get 4 days or something, right?
Right. It gives me the opportunity to sample. Yeah. But if I'm going to be a ski or season's pass type person, I'm going to buy the Red Lodge season's pass. So it's perfect for the ski area because they get to have their core customer, and then they get to have, in listening to Doug's podcast, they get to have all these new trials. And that person may come back, but even more importantly, they may tell their friends, and now their friends want to go to Red Lodge.
Yes. And obviously family and kids and grandkids and all that. Right. So this really could be the point of the spear that could help us get more people involved and could be pivotal. I mean, I am curious. You're talking about that we have a problem with Gen Z at a younger age. They're participating less than average, but you're seeing a big uptick during the pandemic there's a good chance we keep these folks because of passes like the Indy Pass. And I think it transitions really well into the next subject is, hopefully, I think in the past we had 760 ski resorts in the USA. Now it's more like 470. So over the past 50 years or so, we've lost ski resorts at a significant rate. Most of them, I'm guessing, were smaller ski resorts, one rope tow, one chairlift. I think a lot of them were probably in the East Coast, is my guess. Where the East Coast is so good about having these small mom and pop places. So let's kind of start off. I think I kind of hit the numbers. There's somewhere around 470 resorts. We used to have somewhere around 760, and we talked about why that change may have happened. But I'm just curious if you have any other thoughts. Why have we lost ski resorts, and might we get some back?
We are getting ski resorts back every year.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's focus on that. Tell us more. Where are ski resorts popping back up and why?
Most of the ones that we're seeing are more of the small community type ski areas. And for me, that is really important because that speaks to the youth, that place. When you talk to a skier and you say, where did you start skiing? They'll talk about their youth and how they maybe took a bus after school and took lessons at the local ski hill. Yep. So those local ski hills are extremely important. And when we hear of a new one coming on, it usually is that there's more 501c3 like nonprofits that are popping up, community-based and run. So that's what we're seeing. And I think that's very exciting for the ski industry.
And is there anything that NSAA does or can do to help these smaller folks smaller resorts get established?
We talk to a lot of them. And one of the things that we do is we try to get them into our membership, because once they're a member, so for instance, their first year would be free. That's what we do, just to try to get them
that's great.
So they can experience the resources. Because once they have access to those resources, not only are they able to find the people that they need, building a ski area it's an enormous undertaking. You need everything from insurance to haul ropes to staff. It's crazy. So you need to have all those resources in one place. We can help with that. And then they have access to education. So if you want to send your lift maintenance staff to some safety training, it's usually through one of the programs that we offer.
That's terrific. Well, I'm glad to hear that the first year is free, because it sounds like there are so many useful just programs and strategies that you have in place. And then just the numbers really help, because even as a small place, you need to know what are the numbers like near me, and how can I market to these people? And without that, you're shooting in the dark. So you want to have those specifics in place so you can have a sound strategy. So that's great to hear. So I love that. So let's transition really quick to maybe a less popular topic, but something that's so ingrained in our industry. I've gone through it. I'm sure you've been injured before. But injury is something that happens at ski areas, and it happens. My understanding is it happens at a rate of about one injury per 1,000 skier visits. And I was curious, do you folks have information on that you might be able to share?
Unfortunately, that is one segment of data that I don't have. We don't collect that data on injury. We do collect data on fatalities.
Okay, well, that's an unfortunate topic too, but let's talk about that. So fatalities. So let's just start at the top. How many fatalities per year, how many fatalities per capita do we experience in the USA?
Yeah, we haven't released the 2021-22 season yet. That'll come out in just a few weeks. It's all on our website if anybody wants to look at any of the fact sheets that NSAA puts out there to help people understand what's going on in the ski industry. And our website is nsaa.org. It might be helpful to some people. But in 2020-21, we'll call that the first year of the pandemic, we had 48 fatalities. And yeah, one is too many.
Agreed. And how does that sit against our averages?
Yeah, that's right on average, and
it is.
It's less than 1 in a million.
Okay,
that's the chances. But yeah, it's right in there with our average, and we've been tracking this for many years. Unfortunately, it's majority male, Majority skiers versus snowboarders, majority collision normally with objects like trees.
And how about an age? Is it a male in the 30s is my guess?
Yeah. You're right in there. Yeah.
And then do you guys have any data on conditions? Because my understanding from a anecdotal point of view is it seems to happen when, especially like Tahoe, that I'm very comfortable with and familiar with, seems to happen when we get firm conditions. So it gets firm, it gets icy, it hasn't snowed in a while. So if you do fall, it's hard to stop. We all wear Gore-Tex now, which is quite slippery. You don't get any friction. So you take a fall and you gather speed and you might hit a tree. And do you have data on that?
Yeah, I don't have data on conditions. I have data on trail type, what the rating is. And
what might that be? Yeah, any data that you have?
Tends to be the blue.
The blue. Interesting.
Yeah, on the blues, the intermediates. I think the hard surface, the sliding, bluebird days, that's all things that I hear in the ski industry. But we don't have anything to support that. It all kind of makes sense. We all ski a little faster on bluebird days when our visibility, when we have that good visibility.
Well, thank you for that. And unfortunate. So again, skews male, skews in the 30s, and skews on blue squares as far as the trail rating goes. And somewhere around 48 people per year perish at U.S. ski resorts, which is an extremely low number. When you push it against, we get 60 million skier visits per year. So really very, very low percentages, but it does happen. So something to be aware of. And that would just be my anecdote is take care of yourself, your friends and family on those icier, firmer days, because that appears to be something that happens quite a bit, is the slide for life conditions as we call it.
And I would add in there, like some of the safety advocacy work that we do is snow immersion. So unfortunately, when we have really big snowstorms, mostly out west, and so many people flying into like Salt Lake City or to Denver, they need to be aware of that because, you want to get in the trees, but you may not know the hazards of a tree well. And that's part of the education that NSAA provides out materials. So the ski area can push that out to their members, and just through more education. I always think back to Boreal and Amy Oran there.
And that's in Lake Tahoe, California. Continue.
Lake Tahoe, yes, thank you. She was saying, we knew this big snowstorm was coming in, and she and her team basically went out and they greeted everybody as they walked in, and they gave them the snow immersion, like little cards. Give us the quick breakdown. What's on that card? It's pictorial. It shows how kind of like the diameter around the tree and how you can fall in. It's a person upside down with just very few words showing what the hazard is. And once you're in there, especially if you're skiing alone, it's hard to get out. So it says, don't go near the tree wells, ski in groups, never ski alone when you're skiing the trees, just some basic things. And we thought that was so proactive, and that's what skiers are doing now. And that's just a win. It's the same as the helmet. When we started helmet education, we've taken it from 25% of people wearing helmets to this year, 90%. And that's because the skiers are out there and they're just talking about it. I love that too. And that's very standard. I had a close friend in college hit his head really, really hard, but he was wearing a helmet, and he was a little bit concussed, but he was okay. And so I got a helmet. That was back in 2000. So that was my first helmet, and I never ski without a helmet anymore. And so those are huge numbers. So you have over 90% of people wearing helmets. Do you see any other data related to helmets around injuries, head injuries, any other data that you might be able to share around helmets? We don't have the data on what injuries, but I can tell you that the 18 to 24-year-old is the area that we have the least amount of folks wearing helmets. So that's an area that we'd like to see more helmet usage. And we tell people that, just putting a helmet on doesn't give you the license to go faster. You still have to follow your responsibility code and ski within your, your ability. Because that's the worst thing, is for somebody to be like, oh, well, this helmet, I can't get hurt. You absolutely can. And some of those fatalities, those folks were being prudent, and they had their helmets on.
That is interesting. Another anecdote is, you hear people say, well, once I put my helmet and goggles on, I feel much more invincible, if you will. I feel like more strong, more powerful, less vulnerable. And I don't know how much that plays into people's behavior when skiing. But it's to be said, because people are saying it. So if you put your helmet on and you feel indestructible, take a step back. But and obviously, because that's obviously not the case, you can still get injured. MIPS has been a big thing, and I don't know what that stands for. I apologize, but it's a technology in helmets nowadays that really has good data, and it's basically two pieces inside your helmet that can slide against each other, especially with a shear hit where you're not hit directly, hit more at an angle, which happens a lot, and when we fall skiing and riding. So look into MIPS. Those helmets seem to be better. I always get, if I look at two helmets and one has MIPS, one doesn't, I always get the MIPS helmet personally. And I like that, or I don't like, but it's interesting you say that 18 to 24-year-olds, you're having a harder time getting helmets on them. That's also the number one demographic, especially male, for risk taking, on planet Earth. So these people are more willing to take a risk, i.e. not wearing a helmet. But, from my experience, skiing full-time for 21 years now, is you got to have a helmet. It's so pivotal. They're so comfortable now. They're so light. They're so warm. I feel, and I personally feel more vulnerable without it. That's for sure. If I ever do take a run without one, it feels wrong. It feels naked. So I'm glad that that's something you're pushing. And just to take one step back on snow immersion, in case people are still not sure. So a lot of snow immersion comes from large snowfalls. So let's say you get 2-3 feet of snow in one sitting, sometimes more. This often happens in the West. I'm thinking Lake Tahoe, Oregon, Washington, but it happens also Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, where you're getting so much snow that it's very deep, it's very soft, and near trees, there can be a void, a hollow spot, and you can fall into that. And I've done this before. And if you don't have another person with you, you are very likely not going to be able to get out of there. And it's very likely that snow will inhibit your ability to breathe. So I've had that happen too, where snow is falling into my mouth. It's very panicky. You're scraping your face. It's like anytime you can't breathe, it's like being underwater. It's a really bad feeling. And luckily my friend was nearby and he pulled me out. So you're skiing with a buddy to avoid those situations. It's staying away from trees. If you do go into the trees, staying away from the tree wells, which are immediately near the trunk of the tree. So just to reiterate exactly what that means. And thinking of that kind of powder snow and tree skiing, let's just touch on backcountry skiing. The Snow Sports Industry Association, SIA, has some numbers on this from recent. So I just gleaned this off of their website. So it does look like it's growing. And that's difficult to assess. And so I'm curious how they got the numbers, because nobody's at trailheads checking boxes. So when I talk to Ethan Green and Mark Stables at the Colorado and Utah Avalanche Centers, respectively, I always ask them this question, and they don't know. But what we all, again, anecdotally know is it's increasing, because we see more people out there. Sales of backcountry ski gear has gone up. So it appears that this is, and when you do look at people who do say they have finite numbers, they think this is the largest or fastest growing segment of the ski industry. And when I looked at SAA, it looked like around 700,000 people they think are backcountry skiing and riding in the USA. Their other numbers are backcountry skiing and riding continues to see a huge uptick in participation. And again, that didn't come with any numbers, but that was just said. And then every region except for the South Atlantic region saw a year-over-year increase in backcountry skiers and riders. And I think that might only be because the South Atlantic doesn't have a lot of backcountry skiing readily available. So we can essentially say all regions are seeing year-over-year increase in backcountry skiers and riders. And the mountain region, which is more or less that Colorado, Utah, Wyoming region, had the most growth in backcountry skiing. And the Pacific region, California, Oregon, Washington, it was just behind them. They're very close. So basically the Western US, let's just call it, is seeing the most growth in this category, which makes sense because there's so much ability to get out and go backcountry skiing. It's so much easier to do in the West. And I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on backcountry skiing and riding? What have you seen? And do you worry about it threatening ski resorts, or is it just another piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, I would agree with everything you said. I don't have the data to support the 700,000, but Sounds good to me.
I don't think they do either.
Hey, we wish it were a million. I mean,
Yeah.
for the most part, ski areas do not feel threatened that backcountry skiing and riding and the surge is going to take away from the skier visits. We see that as a compliment. Yeah, and that's how we feel about Nordic skiing. Any kind of getting on snow and sliding around is good for the industry. And a lot of times, especially going back to that youth, the programs that are available to them locally might be Nordic skiing. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Get them to slide. Maybe they'll become a downhill skier. Maybe they'll be the next Olympic Nordic skier. It's good for the industry. We applaud it. And I think the backcountry surge is a lot of fun. And just like our skiers and riders, we just want them to be safe out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, another good segue is backcountry skiing, snowshoeing, any sliding, Nordic skiing, all that great for the industry because it all is a compliment. And it's great, right? Because maybe you have somebody on your trip that doesn't ski or snowboard and they could go Nordic skiing, they could go snowshoeing, they could do these backcountry skiing, they could do something else that doesn't involve a ski area. So there's just great to have options and we can all do and try all of them, which makes me think of the future. So the future of the ski industry, the crystal ball. You folks are, the only thing we've really talked about is your folks are predicting, the healthy ski industry would be around 60 million skier visits per year. And we're seeing that already, which is great. By 2026 is what you're hoping for. And we're already there. So hopefully that continues or stays close. And what else? What does the future of the US ski industry look like? Where are we headed?
I wish I knew the answer to that. Being in the ski industry for 30-something years now, I'm always surprised by the surprises. There's always something new around every corner, and I have not predicted hardly any of them. I guess I'm just not creative enough, but there's going to be lots more. I think the seasons pass. What we're seeing with the multi-resort companies and Epic and Icons and Indies, I think they're going to continue. I think they're a really healthy product for our industry.
And there could be more because we're talking about, Powder, POWR owns 11 ski resorts, including Snowbird, Mount Bachelor, Copper, Killington. They could get involved with one or the other or create their own. And then you have Boyne, who owns, I want to say another 11 plus ski resorts, some big ones too. And I'm not thinking of the name, maybe Sugarbush, some of the other big ones that are out there, for sure Boyne. And so there's opportunities. There's other, quote unquote conglomerate owners that could get involved in these. Sorry to interrupt. So there's potentially a lot more conglomeration going out there, and that could happen in the future, and that could really help. And I'm curious, just to take one step back and to feed off of what you said, what has surprised you in the last 30 years? I'd say that the Epic Pass and the Icon Pass for sure surprised me.
Definitely surprised me. I was involved in a multi-resort pass back in the American Skiing Company days.
Okay.
Yeah, so that it was called the All for One Pass.
I like it.
And it was a multi-resort pass. And I don't know which came first, the American Skiing Company kind of dissolving and selling to different companies, or the pass not working. But I think the model today is sustainable. I think that climate change is going to be a big thing for the ski industry, and as we talked about before, not only do we have to make sure that our mountains are sustainable for the future, but we have to advocate. I am really excited to watch what happens with the workforce, the shift that we've been seeing through the pandemic to focus more on the workforce, not just at ski areas, but the entire country. I think that is going to continue. And I think that's a fantastic thing.
Employee housing and benefits and all that.
Yeah. What does the modern worker want? And how can we flex and change to address that? That's going to be big in my mind. You mentioned Boyne, and I think Boyne, amazing chairlifts.
Yes.
8-packs.
Yeah, huge. They own Big Sky. That's right. Big Sky is what I was trying to think of.
They're putting an 8-pack in the Midwest.
That's amazing. I love it.
Right? A bubble.
Yes. Oh, that's
Like,
great.
and you think about the Midwest, I've skied there a couple times when I would have appreciated a bubble. It can get
Oh, I bet.
cold.
I bet it's, I mean, I hear it's really cold. I've seen A Christmas Story. It looks cold
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah. So, those are just a few of the things. It will surprise us all, I'm sure. And I don't want to, sit here and act like I know everything because I don't. I don't. I'm usually just as surprised as the next person that comes across my news feed. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, I love it.
What
I love it. Yeah.
happened?
No, I mean, especially I think with all the moves Altera made, I think as far as surprises go, in my mind, that's what I'm thinking is like Altera as they kept buying more and more resorts, and I'm talking amazing resorts, and adding to their portfolio, and then creating the Icon Pass and having it go so big, and then Epic and Icon going multi-continental. You can go to Europe, you can go to Japan, you can go to South America, you can go to Australia, New Zealand. The future is almost obviously going to continue that direction, which I think is great. And the one question I did forget to ask, which is really quick and simple: how old is the average skier or rider in the U.S.? Do you have that information?
Yeah, I think they're 30, 35. We're aging. We're
Okay.
aging. And when you speak to the boomer and how large that generation is, that is a big part of it.
Yeah.
But
How has that changed over time? That'd be really interesting. Like, do you have data that dates back quite a while? How has the average been changing?
well, in the last 10 years, we've gone from 28
Okay.
to 35.
Okay, so 35. Okay, well, that's good. That fits in with the future of the ski industry too. So it might be skewing older, but it does look like we have some good strategies in place for getting younger people out there. And then, yeah, I think the last question is sort of personal. What's next? We really appreciate what you do. I'm so glad to have you, in the position that you're in as a woman, bringing your perspective, bringing your 30 years of experience. I love that. Diversity is a big initiative, a big important thing for what the NSAA is doing. I love the idea that you're going to create classes essentially and ways to educate people on diversity and all these other topics like climate change that are coming after us, because the future of the ski industry is crazy. It's going to be more diverse. We're going to have more fires, we're going to have more problems with climate change, and we're going to have hopefully a lot more people and a lot more young people. So it is really exciting, it's really dynamic. More conglomerate passes, it's going to be really fun to watch it unfold. And so for you and your personal journey, what's next for you and your journey?
I want to help NSAA and ultimately our members be successful in some of the areas that you just talked about. Building that sustainable pipeline for the future, so we continue to have the amount of skiers and riders we need to be successful. I don't want to get blindsided, so I want to help the ski industry prepare for that. I think you probably heard that climate action and building mountains or fostering an environment where we have inclusive mountains for our workforce and for our participants. That's super important to me. So I want to be a part of that. And then I want to set it up for the next generation. Like my years, I can see the end, and I just want to make sure that I, mentor as many people as possible and help set it up. And then I want to ski their amazing resorts and see what they're doing. I look forward to retirement, maybe, doing something, being my own boss for a little while, have my own business. Not sure what that would be, but nothing too fancy, Miles. Nothing too fancy.
Well, but I hope the one fancy thing is you complete your project of skiing all the ski resorts in the U.S.
Yeah. Luckily, I have a husband whose passion for skiing is greater than mine.
There you
So
go.
I've got a great buddy to go along with me and keep my skis tuned. And yeah, we'll go around and just keep checking off the boxes.
We all need, or at least desire, a ski caddy. So it sounds like you got a great one. Kelly, that is all I've got for you today. Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share here at the end of the show?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot today, and anybody who sticks with us to the end, I applaud. Check out our website if you need more information. And I also just want to thank you for all you do, because you're a very important part of the ski industry.
Well, that is a really ridiculously nice thing to say. I don't know if I deserve that, but I'll take it. Thank you very much, Kelly. And you as well. You're a very dynamic, important piece to this industry. It was great talking with you today. Thanks again for being here, and have a great rest of the day.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Snowbrains podcast. If you liked this podcast, please share with your friends and family, and please subscribe. To find out more about Snowbrains, please visit us at snowbrains.com. You can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Snowbrains.
This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by your Northern California Toyota dealers. Fun family adventures begin at Palisades Tahoe, and the best way to get there is in the Sequoia TRD Pro Hybrid. The iForce Max twin-turbo V6 hybrid engine packs a punch with 437 horsepower while still giving you up to an EPA estimated 22 miles per gallon. Whoa. So you can feel the power without feeling it at the pump. It's made for adventure and made for the mountain. Visit toyota.com/NorCal for more details and start your next adventure in a brand new Toyota, the official vehicle of Palisades Tahoe. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast is brought to you by Vail Mountain. Vail is celebrating its 60th anniversary this season. That's 60 years of powder days, back bowl skiing, ice bars, and new experiences. No matter how many times you've skied these slopes, this season is all about celebrating then, now, and forever. And as a part of the celebrations, Vail will be hosting the National Brotherhood of Skiers for their annual summit in February. So go ahead, plan your next visit to Vail and help them celebrate what's shaping up to be a legendary season. This episode of the Snowbrains podcast was edited by Jared White, music by Chad Crouch, and I'm your host, producer, and creator, Miles Clark.